identical. I grew up in Edmonton since I was a kid. My parents were urban missionaries growing up, so it was a little bit different. They traveled around a bit. I always had the teachings of the Bible. I went to church every week. By the time I was about a teenager, 13, 14, I began to encounter a desire for sin. I wanted to do things that I knew weren't right. And I started to think that God kind of had this joke where He created us, He gave us desire for sin, and then put a law on us to say you can't do these things. Let's see how long you can, hold out.
About five or 6 years ago, my stepbrother, he committed suicide. And I didn't realize really at the time, but he was dealing with like all the same issues that I was dealing with. He was dealing with addiction, he was dealing with self-worth issues. The only real difference was the fact that through everything that he'd gone through in his life, he'd rejected God.
It wasn't long before I wasn't really going to church anymore. I was probably 15 when I stopped. I started to just say, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And whatever feels good, I'm just going to do that. I'm not going to sort of have a law to live by. I believed that God was somebody who He wasn't.
And then those times when I felt miserable and I didn't want to go to God, I still had all my addictions. I had my drugs and I had my alcohol and I had my pornography. I had all these things that I could deal with, and I didn't need God for anything, right? Like I could just muddle or barely make it through, or make it through satisfactorily, whatever way you want to look at it. I mean, I could just do it all on my own.
I believed that God didn't have my best interest in mind. That lie became a chain for me in my life. It was a chain of deception. And when that took root in my life, it put me on a path that drew me away from God. And I was on a slope that by the time I was 18, 19, I was into drug addiction, I was alcohol abuse. I had this lifestyle that was beginning to be caged by a lot of addiction. And I never thought that I would get into that kind of a place, but that thinking about who God was brought me into this place where I was a slave to substance abuse.
I'm really glad that however far away I'd pushed God at that point, He had never given up on me. And that's something that was, I think, really key. God was always, He was working and working, and sometimes it was slower and sometimes it was faster, but He was always working on trying to like pull me back into Him, to reel me back in. Because yeah, I'd been using Him as a lucky rabbit's foot to like solve short-term problems. And then, once the problem was gone, I was pretty self-reliant. I'd worked at my job for 12 years. I had a house, I had everything, like I had all the stuff, I had all the things that I thought that, a person needs to be successful, but they were all just things that were, binding me down. Like they were things that were locking me up from a real life, a real relationship with God.
I was always kind of looking for the next high, the next deeper thing.
I just realized that, my life was really ultimately broken. And, I tried over and over again to fix it on my own. And that doesn't work. You need to surrender it to God. You need to surrender it to Him. That's when you can be set free. That's when, all the good things from God can take over, right? Because He can do it, right? Where I don't have the strength to do it, where I can't make it every day, if I just let it go and let Him take control of, minute by minute, and sometimes that's the most difficult minute of your entire existence, but He can do it.
Middle of the night, maybe 2:30, 3 in the morning, I'm waking up, I'm in a holding cell. I don't know why I'm there, I can't remember the night before. I get let out, I get processed, and I realize I'm given tickets, and I've realized that I'm being charged with assault. That the night before, I had been drunk at a bar, I hit somebody, and I got arrested, and I was being charged with assault. It was a real moment where I realized I'm a person that I never thought I could be. You think when you start living for yourself that you're always in control. I'm in control. I can stop whatever, whenever I want. And when I woke up in that cell, I realized I'm out of control. Like I'm in a place that I never thought I would be. And that was scary. That was a scary moment. I felt like I was doing things that I did not want to do. And that is slavery. It's being forced. And I thought in the beginning I was in control, but the day that I woke up in the cell, I realized I was not in control of this thing. And waking up there, that was the beginning of the journey where I started to say, I need to rethink about who God is and look again.
Ultimately, that's where things ended up, right? It was Youth with a Mission. It was discipleship training school, and YWAM, they've got a zero tolerance policy, right? So, there wasn't going to be any drugs, there wasn't going to be any alcohol, there wasn't going to be any cigarettes, there wasn't going to be any pornography. So these are things that I struggled with. These are addictions that I knew that I needed to be set free from, right? These are chains that were holding me back from the experience that I was going to have.
And so I went to church. That would have been 6 or 7 months later. I went to church for the first time in Vancouver, and I remember sitting there, and the worship music that was going on just hit me so heavy in my heart, and I realized there's an undeniable experience happening here. I'm experiencing the presence of something, and I believe it is God. At that time, that's what I thought. I know it was Jesus. I know that He saw how weary and tired I was, and He said, I can give you rest. And I experienced a grace that the Lord was saying, you need me. You need freedom from these things. And I had never understood that before. I never realized that I did need a freedom, that I really was chained up. I don't know if I would have used those words at that time, but now as I think of it, absolutely, I felt that I needed to be broken free from that. And from then, it was maybe another 3 or 4 months. I had some experiences connecting with some old friends. I really feel like it was divine appointments, God putting some people in my life to help me get my life straight again and get myself out of some of the bad habits and bad company that I had at that time.
It's not like you just all of a sudden have this door to a prison open up and you're Morgan Freeman walking out into the sunset. It's not that for me. I wish it was.
There was a day that came when I was completely free, and it was a process, but the day did come, and I'm there today. This is 10 years. The freedom that I have with Christ today, it's not about chasing that high. It's about living my life out of the destiny that God has given me. That I seek God to know who I am. I get a fulfillment in being a son of God and in praising God and worshiping Him. There's something that I come alive. I believe that we are made for worship, and we're going to worship, whether we're going to worship something wrong or whether we're going to worship something right.
Like God's called me, I think, to something bigger and something better. I'm not 100% sure what that looks like today, but I know that that's what I want to do with every part of myself.
Freedom for me is about worshiping something that is right, worshiping a God that is created for worship and worthy of worship.